What would it take to arouse your life, to experience more connection, more pleasure, more realness, in and outside of the bedroom? I'm August McLaughlin, and this is Girl Boner Radio. Power exchange. In the sexuality world, this term often refers to a relationship between a dominant and submissive, or D and S. The submissive partner eagerly relinquishes control to the dominant in agreed-upon ways that both folks fully consent to. It's pretty common in BDSM, and it often goes far beyond what folks who are more into vanilla-type play imagine. For example, DNS may or may not involve any whips or chains or dungeons. In male and female pairings, either person could take on the dominant or submissive role. In some, partners take turns or switch between D and S. And while this can relate only to sex, some people take DNS dynamics outside of the bedroom, outside of kinky play, and they engage in it around the clock. That's also known as 24/7 power exchange. Today, you'll hear stories and wisdom from two women and one pup in DNS relationships. Both involve a lot of play, communication, intimacy, and fun. The first story features Domina Mara, also known as Miss Mara or Mara. She's a dominant who joined me for a Q&A game back in 2022. The second features Erotica author Eireann Shells. Domina Mara is a professional dominant and filmmaker. She told me that her religious upbringing later played a role in her career path, or at least in certain experiences.
Because I came from a Catholic background, Roman Catholic, I went to a lot of private schools that had disciplining. So I was there during the age where wooden rulers were still okay to be used on children. Luckily, I was one of kind of the good ones for the most part.
She learned wonky things about sexuality.
Appreciating our body is bad, that it's a sin, and all of that kind of stuff. However, I think I'm able to subvert that, to play into that as its own thing, as its own kink, especially those who come from an educational background. Some of my earliest clients were like principals and stuff like that, and people in power, and they wanted like the brat schoolgirl to fail, but then turn the role around on them and punish them. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much more exciting.
Mara's companion, Pup, joined us when we met up. He was wearing an elegant black suit and a dog mask. The pair met at a munch, which is a social gathering in a public place where kinky folks meet to get acquainted. The clothes stay on, of course, and nothing kinky happens. This one was at a restaurant.
And there was an outdoor patio, and we were seated at a 4-person table, but one chair was empty. I had 2 friends on the other side of me, and this one guy tried to keep pushing his business card onto me because he knew that I was a dominant. And so the friend across from me was like, hey, you want to take a walk? And I was like, sure, that sounds great. I had seen Pup out of the corner of my eye enter the scene, basically, but he was just kind of standing there, like, observing people. And so my friend went up to him and was like, hey, you want to sit at our table? He said, sure. And we literally spent the whole night talking, and we ended up parking in the same direction and area away from everyone. So he walked me to my car, and things kind of went from there.
Pup wasn't into pet play just yet.
It was actually very early on in my journey through the kinky world and dynamics, so I was still figuring things out, and it was very convenient to have met a professional early on to kind of get some good guidance from.
Mara describes dominant and pup play like this.
Most of the time, the dominant is kind of like the owner, where they will literally train their pets to be what kind of pet they want them to be. And it's also based on the pet's personality because, you know, some dogs are like super obedient. So there's not a lot of training that has to happen except for like vocal or like visual commands versus like really playful ones or really mischievous ones that do need disciplining and punishment. And that's kind of their thing as well. So there's a lot that goes throughout the entire gamut of them.
She's had other pets she plays with too, but her relationship with Pup is a bit different.
It's a little bit special because For Pup, he gets to speak and he gets to walk as a biped. Whereas like most of my other pets, they have to crawl around. Well, not have to, but it's in their nature to. And I like training them on all fours, unless they're like jumping or doing something that requires them to be on their knees or something like that. In those cases, they wear the full outfit where it's like the leather mitts. They sometimes have a tongue sticking out. That's part of the hood. A tail. Tails are really huge because that's kind of like a really playful aspect of things. And then a leash and collar. But Pup doesn't actually have to be on a leash because he's more like a bodyguard / butler to me. And that's kind of how I've established his character.
In some ways, Mara said, it's kind of like making her childhood dreams come true, only adult and kink style.
Because I've always wanted like a Doberman when I was younger, but I never got a chance to experience pets because my mother was allergic. And so in my Dom life, I can now like literally create the world that I want.
Dynamics like this can involve sex or not.
So in my personal relationship with Pup, it's not sexual. It's all service oriented. And that's kind of where the butler part takes in. So he will drive me places, make sure like my camera equipment is set up properly, sometimes model and pose for me or be behind camera. And so he does a lot of those things to make sure that my life is like easier, but as well as, you know, being a really great companion to like events and stuff like that. He's also just a good boy to have around.
Even if pets in this kind of play aren't sexual with their Dom, Mara said, they might get into it with each other.
There's pet days or pet competitions, and like pets get to meet each other. And so if they're not sexual with their owner, they get to be sexual with each other and play like that, which I think is super adorable, especially if you are, let's say, like two kittens and they, you know, get to pounce on each other or whatever, but then later on really enjoy each other in the bedroom too. That's like awesome. And obviously, who doesn't want two kittens in the bedroom as well? So.
And just like real life kittens, pet play is all about playfulness.
I think that's also why people get turned on by kinks like this, is because it allows them to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you could do that. It's allowing each other to give permission to each other and just make rules that we all can agree on our own terms.
Whether you're into DNS or pet play or anything kinky or not, Mara feels it's important to give ourselves permission to explore different interests.
Even if you don't stay with those interests forever, and that has come to me professionally too with certain kinks. Like I thought I was going to be super into caning somebody, and I still am, but it doesn't give me the same joy as before. I still have a sadistic streak, but now I think I'm a little bit more like, I hope they bandage that properly at home and are cleaning it every day, you know, kind of situation. I'm more of like nurturing to that. And I feel like if you ever have changes on your interests, like feel free to always communicate that, because you don't want that to like fester in yourself or like the other person to resent you for, you know, not communicating that. Those things are kind of like the backbone of my practice and how I approach any relationship. And then also just be kind to each other. Like if somebody's not feeling something that day, like that's okay. There's so many other options that you can like explore and do, and just be playful with each other. That's what this is all about. It's fun, you know?
Stable, nurturing, practical, and persistent. Does that sound like you? The Earth Gift Guide at the Pleasure Chest is for folks who know who they are, know what they like, and they know when to treat themselves to their desires. They have an awesome collection they're featuring right now that includes organic gifts, sustainable gifts for couples who really want to celebrate connection and self-care. It includes body safe toys, classic wand massagers, natural lubes, and fuck machines to make this really versatile collection that aims to please even the high standards of the earth signs. Find a link down in the show notes or head straight to thepleasurechest.com to start shopping. Again, that's The Pleasure Chest at thepleasurechest.com. Now, Eireann's story.
I remember discovering my mom's coffin with The Joy of Sex by Dr. Ruth Weston and I were. And I used to sneak out at night and read it and reread it. You know, all those things I used to read, I was always aware that there was something missing. None of the things that I read included my desire. I've been into spanking for as long as I remember.
Eireann said she was so shy and so ashamed.
I never told anybody about it.
Then she got married in her early 20s, and she told her husband about her spanking desires. He was willing to give it a try, she said, but he wasn't exactly enthusiastic.
I always felt selfish and ashamed, and not in a good way. When we would engage in spanking, it was never satisfying. It was never what I wanted. So I left that relationship and I was like, okay, I'm going to put my fetish right at the center of my dating. I'm going to make sure I'm never unsatisfied again.
The problem was, she said, putting her fetish front and center made a relationship beyond it difficult, unlikely. Still, she had some positive experiences, like the lover she dated for a couple of months.
It was always super hot. There was spanking and there was domination.
One time, she put her hair in braids and did a striptease for him.
That was really tender and vulnerable.
He was a true friend, she said, but after each night together, she was eager to go home. After another wonky experience that led to a 5-year sexless relationship she described as horrible, she matched with someone who turned out to be the love of her life. We'll call him Shades.
We've been talking on a dating app. And so we're talking and we're having this really good conversation. And then he dares me to come over to his house. And we'd been talking long enough before that I felt comfortable doing that. And I was like, sure. And he was like, oh no. He did not expect me to be like, okay, let's do it.
She jumped in the shower to get ready and head over. Then Shades sent her a text.
Are you more dominant or more submissive? And I was like, oh, wow.
That leveled up her interest quite a bit.
I said I'm more submissive, and he says he's more dominant.
Eireann also learned that he's not straight.
We talked about it right from the beginning, that he'd have bisexual experiences.
Later, she would learn about Shades' interest in crossdressing too. They didn't talk about it up front, though, similar to the way Eireann didn't bring up her desires for spanking straight away.
Because there's a lot of emotional rejection at stake.
She pointed out that there was more at stake for Shades, especially in this day and age in the U.S., even though crossdressing is a harmless form of play that lots of folks enjoy.
As a man who crossdresses, you crossdress in the wrong place and you could encounter violence.
And they were just getting to know each other, building trust. Eireann and Shades met up, had a nice conversation, gave each other a hug, and called it a night. Then, as soon as Eireann got home, they started texting.
An incredible text conversation.
He said he was really interested in 24/7 power exchange, so taking on those DNS roles not only during sex and intimacy, but during daily life. Eireann considered that info and told Shades she was interested in having safe words.
So if we can meet in the middle with that, I'm open to it, because daily life is what it is. And having a power exchange definitely spices up very mundane things.
Eireann and Shades chatted a lot about how that would look.
We had all kinds of just in-depth conversation about kind of the shape of each other's desire walking into this power exchange.
Then it was time to delve into the practice in person.
The next date, he was coming over to my house. He told me that when he came over, he wanted me on my knees when he walked through the door.
Eireann dressed in pink, which he had said was his favorite color. She turned on music she knew he would like. Then she waited for him to show up. She was full of butterflies.
It wasn't first date butterflies. I already felt like I knew him at a deep level.
From their many conversations, her butterflies were from sheer giddiness. They flapped wildly as Shades walked through her door.
And he pulled me to my feet and grabbed my hair and he just kissed me. And that was just completely dizzying.
Dizzying, she said, because of the anticipation. As they moved fully into their power exchange dynamic, Eireann experienced more of that, and she loved it.
I used to masturbate like 6 times a day. And from the beginning, that was over. It was nothing without permission, and I had to wait for permission to come. Losing my daily masturbation habit just kind of put me super on edge because I'm such a sensory creature where there's all kinds of things that can give me orgasms that would not traditionally look sexy.
For example, rubbing her lower back. Eireann knew about the clitoral nerves located there. Most everyone with a vulva has them.
And so he started rubbing that spot, and that would get me off. At this point, he could stand across the room and tell me to come, and it works.
Having that little bit of restriction, she said, opened up a whole new arena of her sexuality.
And that I had dreamed of but didn't think could exist outside my imagination. Kind of conventional sex of get hot and then come and then cool down. Like that dynamic never worked for either of us in prior situations.
With this dynamic, Eireann said, they're always at a preheated temperature.
So everything is a little bit hotter.
And nothing seems to shut off their sexual imaginations. Another part of their dynamic is safe vulnerability. This idea that you can be vulnerable with someone, not hold back, and be completely loved exactly as you are.
That in and of itself, that kind of unites my emotional body and my sexual body in a way that I don't know that I've ever experienced.
That's all led to discovering new turn-ons. After Shades felt safe enough to share that he was into crossdressing, for example, Eireann discovered she was really into him doing it. She finds it sexy.
Him in his bra and panties, because I know that that is the thing that makes him feel the most like himself. So he's fully with me in those moments when he's wearing those 2 items. I don't know that I've ever had any time in my life where I was just as a human being who is a creative and a vulnerable person and a very strong person and kind of quirky, right? I have all of those things. All of those things are situationally accepted in different places. But when I'm with my significant other, all of those things get to be present and loved. That's just amazing. And I hope I do the same for him because he's truly incredible.
Eireann shared 2 big pieces of wisdom that she would want anyone who felt as she did early on to hear. One, that in a true relationship, built on the type of love we all deserve, you should be able to talk about anything. And 2, learning to love yourself unconditionally is powerful.
When I've been in a state where I felt that unconditional love for myself, I make much better decisions for myself.
Eireann's erotic imagination takes her to the page as well. She wrote a spicy story that's featured in Best Women's Erotica Volume 10. It's called The Afterlife with Red and White.
There's a line in a movie where they say, you get what you imagine. And I've seen that in other places too. The idea that the afterlife is what we've imagined. So I just wanted to play with that and have some fun with that. I think there's a dominant culture belief that after death, nobody has lust anymore. But I think that lust is such a key component of our humanity. It's such a driving force. Maybe it's all in the body, but for me, my experience of desire is not all in my body. It all starts in my mind.
The main character in her story chooses to work through unresolved issues from life in the afterlife with the ultimate dom. Eireann wrote the story before starting her 24/7 power exchange dynamic with Shades, but the night before she and I spoke, she read it aloud to him.
And then there's a scene in there where she has to take 12 strokes of something. And we kind of recreated that last night. That was really moving to kind of engage in that way with him. There's something about having a boundary and being able to push against it in a safe way with someone you love that just goes soul deep. I don't know if that's true for everyone.
But it definitely is for her. Eireann also penned a series called The Erotic Adventures of Waverly Good.
And this is actually one of my favorite things I've ever written.
It's inspired by her experience with a past lover.
I remember I said something about just call me wet girl. And that sparked Waverly Good, WG, same initials. She's a bounty hunter who, when she orgasms, she knocks out her partner. And that allows them to kind of catch whoever they're after. And the way she gets there is her desire automatically attunes to whoever she's pursuing.
Find The Adventures of Waverly Good on Amazon and Best Women's Erotica Volume 10, most anywhere books are sold. Learn more about Miss Mara and her offerings at dominamara.com. Check out her jewelry shop at keepitkinky.us. And hear the full Q&A game that we played at the link in the show notes. If you enjoyed this Girl Boner Radio episode, I'd love it if you would post a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For very occasional updates from me, sign up for my email list at augustmclaughlin.com. Thank you so much for listening.